Hey everyone, hope you guys have had a great day. I am coming to you live from my kitchen, my new kitchen. I just moved in not too long ago. And tonight I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit about how you use essential oils in cooking. Now, I know it was a little bit before 8:30, but I was going to go ahead and hop on. My son was back there occupied for the moment. If he comes in here, he's just going to have to finish the broadcast with me because there's nobody else here but us two. So if you're hopping on live, say hey. Hope you guys have been having a great summer. I've definitely had a busy summer because I just moved, but hopefully there's some relaxation in my future. I am ready to go to the beach, relax on the beach, and just take it easy. Hopefully you guys have already experienced some of that. But I find that, hey Julie, I find that I love to use essential oils in cooking seemingly a lot more in the summer, just because I feel like fresh dishes, sometimes the citrus oils and different things like that come up. So I love to use those in the summertime, especially like marinades, barbecues, things like that, or just something we do more in the summertime. So this is a perfect time to talk about how you use these in cooking. So if after you watch this, if you feel like someone else would benefit, if you like, oh, my friend loves to cook and she would love to know how to use essential oils in her cooking, you can add her to this group and tag her in this video and she'll be able to watch it. So share with whomever you might like, and I'm going to go ahead and get started for the sake of time. And like I said, my son is occupied for the moment, so if he comes in here, he's just going to do it with me. No worries. All right, well, say hey if you're hopping on. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kari, for those of you who don't know me. My sister and I, Julie, are doing this summer series. So she talked about skincare last week. I'm going to talk about cooking with essential oils this week, and we have a few more awesome topics to come the last 2 weeks in June. So we're excited to, thank you, Katie. We're excited to bring you even more topics if that's what you're looking for. Let us know if there's anything else you want us to kind of come on and talk about. We're open to doing it in July as well, but right now we have these topics set for June. So let's learn about how to use essential oils in the kitchen. This is a question that I get asked somewhat, but I think I would get asked way more if people actually knew you could cook with essential oils, because sometimes I'll mention, oh, I added some basil to my spaghetti sauce, because maybe somebody might say, oh, this spaghetti sauce is good, and I'll tell them how I made it. And they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea you could use essential oils in cooking. So I feel like people just don't know that you can use these in cooking. I didn't necessarily think about it when I first got started with essential oils. I guess I was using them for just overall wellness, and preventative type things if we got sick. Those type of things came to mind. Cleaning, all of those things I think have been talked about more, but this is a great way that I love to use essential oils because you already have them in your home. I don't necessarily know that I would have just gotten started because of cooking with essential oils. It's just a great benefit. That might be you. You might be an avid cook and just want to get started with a few essential oils to have in your kitchen. But most of the time, you start using these because you already have them on hand. And that's really kind of what I did. But they add such value to your kitchen. Not only do they save you money and time, they just add a lot more flavor to your dish, so that therefore you can use maybe less salt, less sugar. Those are some of the things that I love to use essential oils for, and find that they're super valuable in the kitchen. So I'm just going to give you some overall guidelines as far as how do you incorporate these into your dishes versus using dried herbs. A lot of times that comes up as a really question that a lot of people have, because they see maybe basil or rosemary or lemon or something like that used in a recipe, and they want to know how to convert. So I'm going to share some tips on that. But first I wanted to just mention, when I'm discussing some of these tips, I'm definitely only talking about using this brand, because you have to be really careful, right? Not a lot of essential oils, most essential oils are not recommended to be used internally. So you would not want to add them to your cooking recipes and things like that, because these are certified pure therapeutic grade, which means they are, most of them are safe to consume. Obviously all the ones that I'm going to talk about today are safe to consume internally, and you would never want to add anything that was not safe to consume internally in your dishes. So whenever I'm talking about that, adding essential oils to your dishes, I'm only talking about using this brand. Okay, so three overall tips that will guide you when you start using essential oils in your dishes. And I can't say that I came up with this. I actually was researching myself a good while ago and have really stuck by these 3 tips to kind of guide me when I'm using oils in a recipe, because like I said, a lot of times it's going to call for like an extract or an herb, or you're just going to be experimenting. So how do you know what to use and how much? Because the recipe is not going to tell you use 1 drop of doTERRA lemon essential oil, which that would be awesome. And there are actually, while I'm thinking about it, some recipes in books, that are specifically about essential oils. Like the one that comes to mind for me is the Essential Life book. They have a lot of great recipes in there, and they actually will tell you exactly how to use them, but a regular recipe is not going to tell you. So these are some great tips that I have learned. So first of all, you're going to want to convert it, right? Like I was just saying, it's not going to tell you exactly what it calls for in a recipe. So if it's calling for a dried herb, lots of times 1 teaspoon of a dried herb is going to equal 1 drop of an essential oil, whereas 1 tablespoon of fresh herbs is going to equal 1 drop. A lot of times, when they're dry, they're just more concentrated. You use less than if you were to have fresh herbs on hand. So that's kind of the ratio and kind of how you convert if a recipe calls for dried or fresh herbs. So first of all, you're going to want to convert it. Second of all, you're going to want to dilute it. So when you're adding essential oils into a dish, if you just add a drop, say you're adding it to a marinade and you just add 1 drop in, sometimes it might just get directly on the meat and just stay in that one spot. It's not going to get dispersed throughout the entire marinade. So it's a really great rule of thumb to add it to something that you can whisk. So it's not like you're adding it to, like I said, you already have the dish prepared and you're just adding the drop on top of that. It's really important to make sure that you disperse it throughout the entire dish, because you want to get it infused throughout the entire marinade so it gets all around the meat and whatever you're going to prepare. So that's a really great rule of thumb. So we have convert, we have dilute, and then we also have delay. So if you've been using essential oils, you might have heard don't add them to, like for instance, the humidifier. If it runs warm or hot air, we've often told you not to add essential oils to that because it can break down the therapeutic qualities of it and it's not quite as potent used that way. Sort of the same thing if you're adding these to cooking recipes. So if you can, delay adding the essential oils to the end, because that's just going to maintain the integrity of the oil. And so you're going to get those therapeutic benefits a little bit more readily than if you were to add it at the beginning of cooking. You're going to cook it for a long time. You're still going to get the flavor and you're still going to get the benefits, but it just makes a little bit more sense to add it at the end to make sure that you maintain the flavor and the integrity of the oil. Now, with that being said, if you're making something like peppermint brownies, you're going to add it obviously in the batter and it's going to cook. So you're not always going to be able to do that, but if you can, that's a really great tip to do that. Now, in talking about adding them to your dishes, I really love to use this rule of thumb, because if you think about it, okay, let's say you add too much essential oil. It's kind of like adding too much salt. You can't take it away. And honestly, it can ruin a dish, because just like if you were to add too much salt and it's like, whoa, I can hardly eat this. Essential oils will do that because they are so potent. So I always have a rule of thumb to start with less, and you can always add more later. So I love to do this little toothpick trick, to do a swirl of a toothpick in a dish. So the way that you would do that would be just to put the toothpick down in the bottle, and you can't see it on this video, but I can see the toothpick sticking down into the essential oil. And you're just gonna wanna turn the bottle over so to make sure you get some on the end of the toothpick. And then you can see, like I can smell, this is lemon, I can smell it on the toothpick. That way I'm just going to add it to my dish in a very small amount. I'm gonna, stir it up and taste it to see what it tastes like. Not just add 3 or 4 drops to the dish and be like, oh, I wonder if this is enough, and then it's way too much and it's ruined your dish. So that's a great way to add them slowly, just to make sure you're not getting too much. So I love the toothpick swirl technique. And if you think about it, a lot of times a citrus is gonna call for like zest of a citrus. You're gonna wanna use more essential oil as far as if you're using lemon. So lots of times if it calls for like a teaspoon of zest is very concentrated. So with lemon, you're probably gonna end up adding about 3 to 4 drops of essential oil versus a toothpick swirl or 1 drop of essential oil. But if you start off small, you can see how much you need at the end, right? You can keep on adding and tasting. That way you don't add too much. So Just a note on the lemon, you probably will end up adding a little bit more than, say, something like rosemary or basil. A lot of times the citrus oils, you do have to add more. Okay, so why would you not just use herbs, right? This might be a question that you're thinking, like, I already use herbs. I already use dried or fresh or whatever it might be. Why would you want to use essential oils versus herbs? Well, I kind of thought this too, and like I said, it never really occurred to me. I never went to a class on cooking with essential oils. One day I was like, oh, I want to make some guacamole and I don't have cilantro. Like, I love cilantro flavor and in Mexican dishes, I don't have cilantro. Oh, well, I have cilantro essential oil, so I'm just going to try this and see what happens. Like I said, I never really knew how much to add or went to a class or knew anything about it. I just experimented, and it ended up being really good. So that's exactly why I love to use these in place of fresh herbs. Now, if you have a garden and you love to use fresh herbs, there's definitely benefits to using those. You definitely have the texture. You maybe have a little bit of a different flavor than if you were to use an essential oil versus the fresh herb. But for the most part, these replace fresh herbs very well. And so that's one of the main reasons that I love using essential oils versus fresh herbs, is because I simply don't have them on hand. You can ask my husband. He actually made me like this cute little garden in our backyard at our other house, and I might have done okay the first year, but after that it was like, yeah, I don't have time for this, and I don't really have a green thumb. So I definitely value having these in my kitchen because it's so easy for me to just add a drop or two of cilantro to my guacamole versus having to remember to get cilantro at the grocery store, and it might go bad before I use all of it. And a lot of times I felt like I was throwing herbs away when, and that's just money, not really well put to use. So if that's you, if you feel like that, this is a great option to use instead of fresh herbs. Now, the essential oils I would use in place of the fresh herbs would be something like cilantro. I love adding this to really any kind of Mexican dish. You can have like cilantro rice. You can add it to guacamole. You can add it to, like I've added to enchilada sauce before. Really anything that you can think, okay, so fresh cilantro would be good. You can add cilantro oil. And another tip for you, if you want the green color as well, like as if you were to chop up the fresh herb, you can actually chop up spinach, fresh spinach, into sort of a similar size to the cilantro or to the herb that you want to replace, and then add the oil in there, and you have both. Not exactly the same, but it's very similar. I've done that before. That's just an extra tip. You can also do this with basil. So if you wanted the fresh, the flavor of basil, but you also wanted the green color, you can do the same thing with spinach and just add the basil oil to it. So I love using that in different like Italian dishes. Basil is awesome in spaghetti sauce. So I've added that pretty much anytime I make spaghetti sauce. I put basil and oregano. So oregano is another awesome oil that you can use and replace a fresh herb. Now, oregano is very strong. If you know, it's one of the strongest oils, especially if you get on your skin. So make sure when you're dropping that you drop it in and don't get any on your skin. Be careful of that. But also, you really probably only need 1 drop of this most of the time, unless you're making like a huge batch of spaghetti sauce or something. I may put 2 drops, but this is one of the strongest ones, so you usually only need 1 drop. Rosemary is another oil that I love to replace fresh herbs with. Rosemary is awesome on like chicken, or I love to do rosemary and garlic potatoes, anything like that. Anything that you would use fresh rosemary on, you can use the oil. Thyme is another one that I love to replace, and it's great. It's also great, kind of same way as rosemary is. It's has a little bit of a more subtle flavor. So just depending on if you wanted a more pungent flavor, you can kind of vary it between those two. One thing that I love to do with thyme is to put it in homemade chicken soup, especially if I don't have obviously any of the herbs, or it's kind of like a quicker cooking soup. I love to put a drop of thyme in there, or sometimes I might even do a little toothpick swirl if I'm making a smaller batch, and it has really great flavor, and it almost gives it that flavor like you've been making it all day when you only took maybe 30 minutes to make it, which would probably be me because I'm more of a get in and out of the kitchen kind of gal. So I love to use these little tricks to kind of make it seem like I've been cooking these things all day and really added all these flavors to it, but honestly, it was so easy. So now you have my secrets. You can use them, you know, to fake people out as well. So those are some of the oils that I love to use in replacement of fresh herbs. Okay, so some other favorite oils that I like to use in the kitchen, and a few different uses for them. Lemon is one of my all-time favorite oils to use in the kitchen. I remember when I first got this oil, it was in the first starter kit I got. I think I used the bottle in like a week or two. It's just, I love the scent of lemon. It's so bright and fresh. I love to just diffuse it in the kitchen. Any of these oils will be good diffused as well. Just kind of, they have a very bright flavor, just like they add brightness to your dish. They can add brightness in the air while you cook. So lemon is one that I'll diffuse often in the kitchen especially. So any time that you see lemon extract or lemon zest, or you just want something flavored, maybe you don't have fresh lemon juice. I've definitely used this in replacement of that before. If you need the acidity and the lemon flavor, you can put this in a vinegar. So if you think about, you know, lemon juice is pretty acidic. So you can sort of replace that flavor and not necessarily the texture, but if you need the acidity in a dish, you can put some vinegar with a drop of lemon. And that doesn't, it's not like a spot on replacement, but it'll definitely get you through if you don't have fresh lemon juice. I've used it before. So I like to usually put it in apple cider vinegar. It has more of a tart flavor like fresh lemon juice would have. So I'm like the queen of, if I don't have something, I'm gonna try to make it up. I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna just try to wing it because I don't wanna go to the grocery store and I wanna go ahead and get it done. So I pretty much tried all the tricks in the book, and I'm sharing the ones with you that have worked. There have been, of course, some that haven't worked, but that one is pretty spot on, and it'll definitely get you through those times when you need a fresh lemon. So, baking, fresh, you know, a smoothie or a sorbet or anywhere you would need a pop of lemon. I put these in like blueberry muffins, lemon pound cake, a glaze. This is really, really good to put in a glaze as well. So anywhere that you can think that you would use lemon, you can use lemon essential oil. All right, so wild orange is obviously a citrus oil, very similar to lemon in the fact of that it's a bright flavor, a bright scent. So you can use it anywhere you need a pop of orange. So if like in cooking, it will be really great as far as baking, a glaze or in a dish. I've actually added this to, I was making wassail one time. That's obviously in the winter, you might make that with cinnamon and clove. This is really good added to that. I'm trying to think what else. Definitely added this to smoothies. Say you have like a vanilla smoothie and you want to make it more like a creamsicle. You can put 1 drop of wild orange in there. Obviously I add it to my water all the time, but anywhere you would need orange, I think they make orange extract as well. I've never seen a recipe that called for that, but you could definitely replace that with this as well. All right, ginger. Ginger is one I actually just used tonight. I love to use ginger essential oil in my kitchen in lots of different ways. I used to keep ginger a lot on hand, but then I forgot one time, and then I was just using this to replace it. I was like, this works just as well, and it's just a lot easier too. Like I used to put ginger in the freezer, and then you'd have to get it out and grate it and all of that, and you need a lot of ginger, honestly, to replace one drop of oil. So it's just a time saver for me. And it provides that extra pop of flavor that sometimes fresh ginger just doesn't have, or you would just need to add a lot to it. So I love to use this one. Now, tonight I added it to a sauce that I was making for some meatballs. So that's a great thing, you know, in replacement of ground ginger or fresh ginger. Normally you only need a drop of this because it is pretty strong, but sometimes you might add 2. I don't think you probably need 3. Probably 1 or 2 would be good. So I added, I think 2, because I was making a good bit of the sauce tonight. So that's a great way to use it. I like to also use it in tea. So just like you would put you know, if you were to slice a piece of ginger, an inch of ginger maybe, you would put that in your tea and let it steep. You can do 1 drop, or even if you wanted just a little flavor, you could use the toothpick technique to swirl it in your drink, and that would be a great way to use the oil. I also love it to add it to smoothies. That may be something new. It was kind of new for me, but I saw a recipe and I was like, man, this sounds really good. It was like banana, mango, ginger smoothie. I don't know. If you don't like ginger, you may be like, you might have to try it. I did, and I really liked it. It kind of adds that extra different flavor. If you're used to just drinking like fruit smoothies or something like that, it adds a really unique flavor to it. And it has that kind of warmth as well. So I love adding ginger to smoothies. Definitely only 1 drop because it can be overpowering. And it can actually, just like a lot of these essential oils, if you add too many, it can get a little bit bitter on you. So just make sure you're doing either the toothpick technique or you're just adding 1 drop if you know that you've added it before and it's good. But just start out with less and you can always add more. So ginger is one that I like to use a good bit. All right, peppermint. Peppermint is, man, I love the taste and the smell of peppermint. If you've ever used peppermint in a beadlet form or you've diffused it, you just know that it's so invigorating. So there's lots of great ways that you can use this in your cooking as well. You can add it to smoothies. You can add it to teas. You can add it to, I've actually made fudge, like peppermint fudge with this peppermint instead of like, I think I've made it before and you had to melt the peppermints down and it was like this whole arduous process. But then I just was like, oh, I'm just gonna add some peppermint to it, and it tasted even better because, like I said, this is very concentrated and it adds that pop of flavor, which sometimes, you know, dried or different types of flavorings that you would have can't do that. So this is a great reason to use essential oils in your cooking as well. If you haven't heard of peppermint brownies, where have you been? I'm just kidding. But that is one of the most popular ways to use peppermint in your kitchen. I think I remember last time I added probably about 2 to 3 drops, sometimes more depending on if you make more brownies, because you have to think you're going to add more to things that you cook and bake than to fresh items. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But peppermint and brownies is an awesome way to just give it that extra bit of umph without really doing anything else. All you did was add a few drops of peppermint, and then you take them to party and people are like, oh my God, these brownies are awesome. You must have spent like all afternoon making them, and you're like, yeah. You don't have to tell anybody your secret. Like, it's safe. It's okay. Now y'all might know my secret, but hey, it's okay. You're not going to tell anybody. You're just going to use it, and then people are going to think you're an awesome cook too. Okay, so lime is another one that I love to use right along with lemon and wild orange. It's just, citrus oils are great to use in cooking in general. So this one would sort of go more in the direction of you could use it in Mexican cooking, or any time it calls for lime, just like it calls for lemon, you could use it in that aspect. You can put it with vinegar, like I mentioned, that little trick if you don't have a fresh lime. So it's very versatile. I've also made like limeade with this instead of using fresh limes, which you're not necessarily going to get that all the rounded out flavor because the vinegar trick won't work in that. But it's awesome if you have some fresh limes, but you maybe don't have enough. You could totally put some lime essential oil in there, and it's just going to give it a little bit more depth of flavor than if you were to just have the limes squeezed or the lemon. Same thing with lemonade. You can make either one of those and add it for an extra pop. Okay, and then one more, which everybody's not going to have this one, but I thought I would mention it. Cumin. They had cumin oil as a special, I think it was for probably 2 or 3 years in the summer. It was called the Summer Sensations Kit, and it was like cumin and spearmint. I think it might have been tangerine and dill. So they have spearmint and tangerine as permanent items now. They may have this one, you know, in the next few years, who knows. But cumin is definitely an awesome addition to Mexican dishes. It's very potent. You would only need, even a toothpick swirl would be awesome in like rice or refried beans. I've used this in it really smells a lot like refried beans to me, just right out of the bottle. So that's an awesome, another one. If you had that sitting around, you could definitely pull it out and use it in Mexican dishes. So let me know what questions you have. I'm glad some of you are joining in live, and I know many of you are going to watch the recording. I'm excited for you to like pull out your oils and use them in a whole nother way. Because let's face it, like I said, most people don't get essential oils because they're like, oh, I want to learn how to cook with essential oils. They've gotten them because, you know, they wanted to use them to kind of detox their home and live more of a non-toxic lifestyle. And this is just one more way you can use them on top of cleaning and emotional health and air quality and personal care and all of these different ways that we use essential oils. This is just one more way that you can get even more benefits out of them, but also save yourself some time. This seriously makes being in the kitchen and just having like a well-stocked kitchen. A well-stocked kitchen to me means that I have my essential oils on hand. And I actually just leave a lot of these in my spice drawer. So it's right there. They're out of the sunlight. They're protected. So these are going to last a good while because like I'm not going to use cumin every day, right? So this is going to last me, you know, if I keep it in a dry, cool place, it's going to last a long time. So you're going to get longer storage life out of them if you do keep them away from sunlight. So just keep them in where your spices are. That way it'll remind you to use them as well. Have I used fennel oil? I have not used fennel oil. You know, I'll be honest, I don't love the flavor of fennel, so I really have never used fennel in cooking a whole lot. Now, I will say if you made like a sausage, that has fennel in it, fennel flavor. You could maybe put a little toothpick swirl or a drop in that. I think some Italian cooking does have a fennel flavor to it. Some people like fennel flavored, I think there's like a fennel flavored tea, or that obviously it has other herbs in it, but it has that sort of flavor. If you really like that flavor, you could totally use fennel. Now there's more than I mentioned. Really any that you can consume internally that you like the flavor of. I mean, even lavender. You know, some people love like lavender lemonade, or there's lavender like scented cookies or flavored cookies. You could totally use any of these in that aspect. I was just kind of giving you an overview tonight of like the ways that you use them, how do you convert them, you know, over to using recipes, different things like that. So use the tips that I gave you and experiment. Even bergamot, a lot of people like to put that and make like an Earl Grey tea. It kind of has that flavor to it. So you can totally use that in tea. There's lots of different things you can do. Oh my gosh, one more that I forgot to tell you about. Can't believe I forgot this one. Cinnamon. Wow, it wasn't on my sheet, so I forgot it. Cinnamon is one that I love to put in recipes because I love the flavor of cinnamon. And the cinnamon bark essential oil is very, I mean, has a great flavor to it. And it's obviously a lot more concentrated than if you were to, you know, add ground cinnamon. It's just gonna give more of a pop. So, I mean, anything, like, you know, you add cinnamon to a lot of like baking recipes. You could totally add a drop or two of the cinnamon essential oil. If you make teas, you can add it to that. Even some coffee drinkers like to add a little bit of cinnamon to their grounds or to the actual coffee. Now, we'll give you a tip on that. I've added cinnamon oil to my coffee and it's a little bit too potent, even one drop. So I'll use the toothpick technique. You just stick the toothpick down in there. Now I have a dropper top on this one and you can totally get these dropper tops at a lot of different places. If that's easier for you to make sure that you just get one drop, you know, it's gonna be easier to measure out one drop if you get the dropper top. So that's another little tip for you. But I like to use the toothpick technique in the cinnamon and then just swirl it in my beverage. It kind of gives it more of a subtle cinnamon flavor, but definitely baking, I've added it to granola. You could add it to like wassail again. There's lots of different things that you could use cinnamon for. So I can't believe I forgot that one, but I'm glad I didn't leave it out. So if you guys have any more questions, please feel free to post under this even after I'm off and I'll come back and answer them. Like I said, share this with somebody that you think would enjoy the information. A lot of people slow down during the summer and they get together more, they're making more dishes. This is a great way to just experiment, you know, get your kids in the kitchen as well and let them help you and just use some of these in different ways and experiment to see what works best for you. And just finding new ways to use our essential oils is so fun to me. So I hope that you get in the kitchen and experiment with some of these and you learn something new tonight. Please join us for the next 2 installments of our summer learning series, and myself, or Julie, will be with you the last 2 weeks. I'll be with you next week and she'll be with you the last week. So we're looking forward to seeing you on there, and I'll see you guys later. Have a great night.